today, and Aaron Henson and Zania Duhaney. We're all on the same team and just playing different supporting roles today. So I'm going to share my screen and we'll go ahead and get going with the presentation. Okay. So Jim, I mentioned this, the number one thing to kind of help today run smoothly is that it's best for everyone to participate on a desktop. If you can't, I understand, we're just gonna kind of share that now. And then I think we're all pretty used to Zoom meetings at this point. There's kind of the standard guidance for how we can operate smoothly posted on the screen. And then Missy had asked if there was something that you guys should have looked at before today's meeting. There is an informational meeting or video out there about the Charlotte Future 2040 Policy Map and the Charlotte Streets Map. And that video provides a lot more detail about these two mapping efforts than I'm going to be able to provide today. I will still provide some highlights, but the objective of today's conversation is really to look at the draft 2040 policy recommendations in your area. Again, since we're a small group, we'll probably have plenty of time to ask questions along the way. So don't hesitate to raise your hand or speak up. So to get us started, some of the highlights we want to cover are basically what is the purpose of the Charlotte Future 2040 Policy Map and the Charlotte Streets Map. And simply the purpose of these two initiatives is to help implement the vision of the 2040 Comprehensive Plan. Not sure if you are all familiar with the Comprehensive Plan. It's our city's guiding document for how we will grow and change over time. And it was just recently adopted by City Council this past summer in 2021. So now that it's been adopted, there are several initiatives underway, the ones listed here on the screen, all aimed at putting the plan into action. So the policy map provides direction for where and how development should occur. The streets map provides direction for how our arterial streets should change over time. And the Unified Development Ordinance consolidates our land development regulations into one central location and has updated them so that they're more aligned with the vision of the plan. So that's a very high level overview of what's the purpose. And then in terms of how the street map and the policy map relate, they are two documents or two maps that will really inform how our built environment changes over time. The policy map is going to inform what you see here in this image related to the buildings, where those, how big and intense those buildings are, where they're located in relationship to one another in the public realm, what type of mobility options you need within the vicinity, as well as what type of open spaces need to be provided. To complement that land use and form, the streets map is going to guide what happens along the arterial streets. So as development occurs, if lanes need to be added or bicycle and pedestrian amenities need to be added, this is the map that's going to inform that. So they both will eventually help build more complete and better places throughout our city. So we'll look a little bit closer at the Charlotte Streets map before we dive into today's conversation. If you're not familiar, when we talk about streets, a street includes a number of components, all illustrated here on the screen. It's really everything that's happening between the building frontages. So the pedestrian accommodations, whether that's a sidewalk or a side use path, the bicycle accommodations, whether that's a buffered bike lane or a shared lane, and then your travel lanes and your turn lanes. And so those components work together and really impact how a street looks, feels, and functions. This street map is going to provide the future vision for all the arterials in the city. So again, what does that future cross-section look like? This is the recommendations included within this map are a result of adopted policies that have been vetted throughout the years. So they're not new cross sections that CDOT just came up with. They really reflect years of ongoing conversation and planning. It's an important tool because it's going to work in concert with the Unified Development Ordinance. Those are the city's land development regulations that I mentioned at the beginning, to inform how development occurs moving forward. So if a site is to be developed or redeveloped, they're going to have to reference the guidelines both in the street map and the UDO. And then, as I've mentioned once or twice, this map, what you'll be able to see is the recommended future number of lanes, how the street's classified, and bike and ped amenities. The online application that's out there is going to offer a lot of information. When you click on a street, you'll see a pop-up box here, or similar to this. And again, it tells you the type of cross-section, the distance that's needed between curbs, any special notes, and then the other amenities like bike and ped. You can also see an image if you click down at the bottom. And the questions that are being asked on the streets map are basically, do you agree with the street classification? If not, why? And then how do you use this street? So the input received from the community via this application, CDOT will use to update or maybe revise these street classifications accordingly. The online application is open until November 14th, and this is really the primary way that CDOT is asking to collect comments. So moving on to the 2040 policy map, what is this map? This map, as I said, is going to inform where and how development occurs. And what's important about our map is that it is really a citywide guide for how we're going to balance the needs and opportunities associated with future growth. We are looking citywide at where future growth should go so that it can be accommodated by our infrastructure. We're also looking at where citywide growth should go so that we protect things that are important to us, like our neighborhoods and our parks and preserves. And then we're also looking citywide at where growth needs to go so that we provide better access to underserved areas in the community. That's kind of a hallmark of the comprehensive plan, is to provide better access in the future to goods, jobs, and housing, all of the things which will help us be a more equitable city in the future. So that's really the important thing to remember, is this mapping effort is looking citywide and is a holistic approach for how to manage growth moving forward. The colors on the map represent a tool called place types. Place types are a more modern and comprehensive land use classification system. For the last 25, 30 years, however long we've been planning for the city, well, 50 really, we've been using what's called future land use. And that only really talks about the type of development that's appropriate, so maybe residential or commercial. Place types, in comparison, talks about the 4 things that you see on the bottom of the screen. Place types tell us what type and mixture of uses is important. It talks about the building form and design, and again, mobility and open space. So in that one color, you have these 4 things represented. And by virtue of that, we're providing more and complete guidance for future development, and this tool will help us create more complete communities. We developed this draft map using the 3 steps listed at the top of the screen. I'm going to kind of talk about those steps as we move through this geography, just so that we can spend more time looking at the map together. If you're not familiar with place types, again, that's that new tool we're using. It's helpful to know that the 10 place types that we have to use in our toolbox are divided into the live, work, and play category. This palette or selection of place types was vetted by the community during the comprehensive plan development. So we're not talking about whether or not these are the right places for Charlotte. That conversation has been closed. Instead, we're talking about where's the right place to assign these colors or map these colors. Here's an overview of what the colors represent. So yellow is neighborhood 1, and this is an area that's predominantly low density housing. You can think of single family neighborhoods. It also allows duplexes and triplexes. The orange color is neighborhood 2. It's a more intense residential area. So the building types will be something ranging from townhomes to apartments. Neighborhood 2 does allow a limited amount of neighborhood serving shops. So you can imagine maybe a coffee shop at the bottom of an apartment building. Neighborhood center is represented by pink, and this is a small walkable mixed use area that serves surrounding neighborhoods. I like to imagine maybe some townhomes next to a grocery store development where you can walk over, buy some groceries, and also get a cup of coffee and drop off your dry cleaning. Green is representative of parks and preserves. These are the very large open space areas, maybe a nature preserve or a regional park. It's important to note that all of our place types encourage open space of some sort. So you will not see very small, granular neighborhood parks colored green because they're expected to be provided as part of the neighborhood 1 place. Blue is a community activity center. This is a bigger version of the neighborhood center. So it's more intense. It includes a mixture of uses, so residential, office, commercial. And these places really need to be located along major transit corridors or roadways so that they can be readily accessed by the community. Red is representative of commercial development. This is primarily car-oriented retail. And you will most typically find it along major streets or near interstates. The teal color represents campus, and a campus can be a hospital campus, a university campus, or an office park. They're usually larger areas with one user or one institution, and they have a number of buildings, building types and different uses throughout. Light pink represents innovation mixed use, which is also a mixed use area, but it focuses more on employment. The innovation mixed use is a new type of place in our city, and it's trying to help provide a better and future use to some of our older urban manufacturing areas. So if you think about some of the redevelopment you've seen around South End and now moving into NODA, this place will allow those older manufacturing areas to evolve into office and studio and research spaces. The purple represents your traditional manufacturing. This is an important place for employment opportunity. And we have larger buildings that house things like production, manufacturing, and distribution. And then finally, the dark blue is our regional activity center. This is our largest and most intense mixed use place. Again, it needs to be located along transit corridors or major roads for accessibility. And the easiest example here would be Uptown. It is our most prominent regional activity center. So I know it's hard to keep all of this in mind as we move forward, but Erin, do you have, can you drop that link to the place type portion of the comprehensive plan? And if you need a reference as we move forward, you could keep that web browser open and look over at that. Oh, Missy just asked for a single post. Erin, do you mind reaching out to Molly real quick and asking her? She sent that link to me yesterday and I forgot to add it to the links page.
Sure.
Okay. Missy, that'll be coming in just a minute. We have this page in our Google Docs, and so just hold for that. So again, these are the inputs that were used in the 3-step mapping process. I want to talk about these as we look at the map together, just for the sake of time. But just know that we'll be talking about the 3 steps and the inputs that were used as we look at the West Outer geography. So here is the area of town we want to talk about today. It is, generally bounded by 485, our city limits, county boundary, and then this is, I think, the Beaver Creek towards the south. And the first step in developing our draft map was to translate what's on the ground today into the new place type tool. So you guys live here, you're very familiar with it. Try to imagine, if you can, what these colors represent. We have a lot of gray in this area, which is unusual compared to other parts of town. Gray is actually vacant. So you guys have a lot more vacant property than other areas. You have a lot of yellow, which means you have a lot of low density residential housing. You also have a lot of green. So you have a lot of larger open park spaces. And then there is some purple, which is the manufacturing. We have some manufacturing along Wilkinson, along 85 and the city boundary. And then there's some red scattered throughout, which is more of that car-oriented commercial development. So the value of this step is to really just help people understand how the tool is intended to be applied. These are larger geographies than you would see on our future land use map. So it's not as granular. Again, that's the kind of the nature of that place type tool. It's more holistic and talks about a number of things in one color. And then this is also a good reference as we move through our mapping process, so you can just see what's expected to change over time. So that's our first step in developing the draft map. The second step in developing the draft map was
Catherine, can I just interject right there just for 1 minute?
Sure.
On that previous, this is the existing map, correct?
Correct.
Do you mind if I draw on the screen?
You can, yeah.
See what I'm talking about?
You're comfortable with the annotation feature? We'll be using that later, so that's great if you want to go ahead and use that now. Sure.
You see this parcel right here? That's along Morris Chapel Road. You probably don't have a mechanism by which to zoom in on that currently, though it doesn't seem like by the way you've drawn it. But our neighborhood has really pointed this out, or our community, that purple parcel that's listed in this map as manufacturing and logistics is actually currently zoned as residential. And we've been trying to get this changed. We've reached out several times, and because by thinking that it's already zoned that way, that really has implications for how people interpret proposed changes or not. And so
it's zoned residential, but what's the use? Like, how is it being used?
Residential. There's nothing
really?
on the property.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's an inaccuracy from our data, and so that is something that we can correct.
Yeah, and I feel like that's very important. We have a vision for this region and where manufacturing logistics are appropriate and where they absolutely are not. And that parcel right there especially really crosses that boundary, we think.
So just so you know, the error would either be in our existing land use data source or in how we conglomerated the parcels. We used, from a GIS perspective, you kind of set some boundaries, like pull in stuff with its center within a certain distance. So that could either be an error reflective of the data or that particular step in the methodology. But I appreciate you pointing that out, and that's an error that we can fix, and it will allow things to be more accurate. So thank you. So the second step in our mapping process was to translate zoning, so how properties are currently entitled, and then our future land use recommendations that were adopted since 2010 into the place type tool. And so the comparisons you can see here on the right is the difference between existing development and our adopted policy steps. Some of the significant changes that you might observe on this map, there's a lot more neighborhood 1, because neighborhood 1 absorbed some of the smaller supporting uses like campus or commercial smaller than a certain size. You also notice that all of those wonderful parks and preserves are gone. That's because they're zoned R3. And so we immediately recognize that as something that needs to be corrected as we move forward. Some other things you'll see is a significant jump in the community activity center, the neighborhood center, and the innovation mixed use. Innovation mixed use, if you remember, it's that mixed use employment area. And that's located here along Wilkinson. And then there's also some smaller scale mixed use play area and mid-sized mixed use play area here and here. The neighborhood center reflects the Catawba area plan recommendation, and this community activity center reflects the center's corridors and wedges recommendation. So this map is a balance of both zoning and adopted future land use. Are there any questions about this map or any observations?
This map matches the one that's in the that's on the page for feedback. Is that accurate? This is the proposed, or there's yet another step.
There's more steps. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. This is the second of our third step.
And I'm sorry, can you say one more time how you took what the zoning already was, what the existing plans already were, and you
to get the second map,
and you looked at them together.
Yeah. So
yeah,
if our area plans only cover a small geography, right?
Right.
So we needed to lean on another major input, and that was zoning.
Okay.
The idea there is we don't want to disregard existing entitlements. From a property owner perspective, you want to respect those and not try to take anything away. So that's why zoning and future land use are the two major inputs here, because they essentially represent what can happen today and what would happen if we don't make any changes.
Okay, and so I'll just point that one out again and say that's a mistake.
Thank you.
Sorry.
No.
I have a neighbor. We have a neighbor that would kill me if I didn't. So
I totally understand. So what's important to know is that, I said the first step, the existing development step, was more of just a reference. This second step, our adopted policies, this is really our building block for the first draft of the 2040 map. So keep in mind the changes that we're going to talk about next are building upon this map. So the first thing we did, I mentioned that we lost a lot of that wonderful green space when we relied on zoning. So what we did is we incorporated, we went back and preserved or protected these green spaces regardless of their zoning. Another thing we did was try to preserve neighborhood 1 when it was of a certain size. So if there was 1 or 2 parcels that was zoned for multifamily, those were not protected because we were respecting the entitlements. But if there was a larger critical mass of 5 or more single family homes, those were protected as neighborhood 1. And so when I say 5 or more, you might challenge me that that's insufficient or should be something different. And that's okay. That's good feedback to hear as part of this mapping process. We consider those thresholds, and those are things that we're happy to talk about and debate as a community and revise in the second draft. And then another thing that we really wanted to protect per guidance from the comprehensive plan, was our manufacturing sites. I'm going to point out that this step was kind of a whole sale preservation. Anything that was manufacturing on the existing was preserved here. Some of the errors we've seen with that is that we have protected some small utility sites, which don't really make sense because they're not being used for manufacturing, and they're really more characteristic of the place around them. So we'll be going back and cleaning that step up before the next draft.
Before you move on, would you mind just toggling once more between the prior map and this map? Just so we
it's the same map, just showing you the blue outline is what was protected.
Oh, well, I meant the one before that, sorry.
Oh.
The one. Okay. All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So as we move through these steps, we want to poll you guys and just see if you agree with these approaches. Kind of asking for some affirmation that what we have in place so far is appropriate. So I think Alberto, are you running the polls for us today?
Yes.
Okay. So if you'll launch the first one, we're asking, do you think neighborhood 1 or the preservation of neighborhood 1 and parks and preserves aligns with the direction from the comprehensive plan to protect our community assets? I'm going to point out we've separated manufacturing from neighborhood 1 and parks here because we've learned even more about it, and we have another poll question related to manufacturing later. So we'll leave this open for just a few seconds since there's just 3 of us today.
Do you don't have a mechanism to separate out these two things?
Like, we've heard that.
I would strongly agree with Parks and Reserve, for example, and then the neighborhood 1, I'm more ambivalent about because I feel like neighborhood 1 has room for neighborhood 2 and even neighborhood centers to a certain degree.
Okay.
But maybe there. I haven't had a chance to look at the map more closely enough to know if there's, by doing this, that there's sufficient room for those other place types.
Thank you for sharing that. We've heard that as well. Like, people can kind of agree more with the parks and preserves than neighborhood 1.
Sorry to be the only one talking, Jody.
No. Well, Jim, can I ask, are you able to participate in the poll on the phone? I imagine you're not. Okay, I can't hear you, so I'm thinking that's a no.
Yeah,
So,
Missy, I'm here, Missy, and yeah.
All right, I think the 2 people who can participate, Missy and Jody, have. So we'll end the poll and share it. And Missy, thank you for your comment about separating out these 2 steps. And it looks like Jody, in general, agrees with this step. So we'll keep going. These are, we don't want to spend too much time on these affirming poll questions just because we have a lot to cover. I'm going to... So in addition to the preservation policies, the next big thing we did to develop the draft 2040 map is to try and provide better access to housing, jobs, and goods. Again, this is direction that comes from the comprehensive plan, and the plan has a tool or a methodology embedded within it called the equitable growth framework. And so that framework provides a lot of detail about what's considered accessible, where we need to improve the access, and how you would do that. So these steps reflect the direction from that equitable growth framework adopted within the comprehensive plan. And the first improvement that we tried to make was improving access to housing. There's a lot of different ways to improve access to housing. From a place type perspective, we can improve access to different types of housing on this map. And so the areas shown in black hatch are considered to have sufficient access based on the place types there. And so we were focused on what are called the gaps, these areas that are not hatched. And we wanted to find opportunities where we could recommend neighborhood 2. Neighborhood 2, again, is the higher intensity residential place that allows things from townhomes to apartment buildings. And so by recommending neighborhood 2, you're allowing different types of housing to occur, and that provides more diversity. So what we did is shown here. You can see some orange is underneath the hatch that was already recommended, but then some of the orange here circled in blue are the areas we identified as opportunities for additional neighborhood 2. These opportunities reflect things like proximity to transit, development status, it's either undeveloped or underdeveloped, and then land use suitability. So there's a number of things involved in that in terms of market and how viable it is. But you can see here through this step, we were able to recommend a decent increase in neighborhood 2 to provide more housing options.
I think there should be a lot more. And I don't know if
I hear you. I would
feedback about that.
What happens is the other place types, such as community activity center or neighborhood activity center, they also provide an increase in that housing choice, and those places will fill in some of these gaps.
Yeah, even looking at the whole map just now in your website, like I don't think there's sufficient in Outer West currently. I've looked at the whole thing, and the development is coming, and if we don't plan for higher density now, we're just going to be we're going to be back to where we were. I mean, unless you can get the county and notice that a lot of this is unincorporated. We don't even have a say in in rezoning, or to vote for our city council members that vote on the rezonings for this region. For a lot of us, this whole area, I think, is unincorporated just about. So
okay.
I think
so you want to see that guidance up front so that you don't have to deal with it.
I think why reinvent the wheel 20 years down the road when we're just in trouble? Like, plan now for that type of development. And right now you have this area right in here along Wilkinson, which is right next to this huge resource, the river, this beautiful place, and you have it as some wonky, it's actually listed as other, I think, on the map right now. Like, what is that? And why isn't this a commercial center right here along Wilkinson that's directly on the light rail? There's going to be a light rail stop right there.
Let's table that. I'm pretty sure that's recommended for innovation mixed use, which would allow housing to complement the employment. But let's make sure to come back to that.
It's a very light pink, light purple.
Yeah, that's innovation mixed use.
No, there's two light. Maybe is gray other than?
Gray is from the first map, and that means it's vacant today.
I just can't read the colors on your map between other and innovation mixed use. I can't tell the difference. Okay, we'll come back to that. But in any case, I think there could be a higher proportion of neighborhood 2 and neighborhood centers.
And we'll see a higher proportion of neighborhood centers as we move through these steps. But I hear you that you think more neighborhood 2 is also appropriate. So thank you for that comment.
And I so Jody agrees.
I'm sorry?
I'm sure Jody agrees. If she's not speaking up, that means she agrees. She would say something if she disagreed.
Perfect. So again, wanting to kind of ask for your opinion on this step. Alberto, if you'll go ahead and launch the poll, do you think mapping neighborhood 2 in areas with low access to housing is a good approach to increasing our housing diversity? And I believe once he launches that, the options range from strongly agree to strongly disagree.
Yeah, sorry, it's giving me an error message on launching that poll.
All right, let me try from my end. Yeah, it did this to us yesterday. Okay.
You can post it in the chat if you'd like, Catherine.
That sounds good. Thank you. And Missy and Jody, if you'll just state whether you strongly agree, neutral, disagree, or strongly disagree.
Yeah, I strongly agree.
Okay.
Hold on, guys. I'm trying. Can you just pencil me down? I'm on my iPad, so it's
That's fine. We can pencil you in.
Yeah. I agree. But back to the down by our Catawba River and stuff, we've heard from Parks and Rec that they're going to open up a huge marina down there, and it seems like that we have a more shiny portrait of what we want than what the maps are indicating. Like Missy was saying, we're down right on there's a lot of things that we can pull off and make it prettier than what's showing up on the maps, I think is what we're shooting for. We've got the White Water Center over here, and there's just so many different amenities that other parts of Charlotte don't have. And we've discussed this, and if 2040 doesn't come and look at this, like, this is a huge, we can make a huge mistake and not take some of the natural things that we have here and make Charlotte like a cool destination, or we can just botch it up with housing and manufacturing. That's kind of what we're looking at.
So I would offer that part of this engagement phase, like part of the objective, is to hear what's missing from this mapping methodology. So if you guys feel like this approach is not capitalizing on opportunities sufficiently enough, that's something that we can look at and try to figure out how to add in to the approach. So that's good feedback to hear from you all. Can I summarize that and see if you agree? I consider that would be like an addition to our approach, where we need to evaluate, we need to evaluate other assets and figure out how to provide recommendations that support them by 2040.
Yeah, county-wide assets. I mean, like the Whitewater Center is like the third most visited attraction in the southeastern United States, or some crazy statistic like that. And yet this plan, like Jody indicates, is not taking advantage of that. So, and there's others similar. There are other features around Mecklenburg County that would be like large county-wide assets that should be taken advantage of or recognized in the planning process.
Okay. And I would be willing to bet that value is reflected in the comprehensive plan. It's just, it would be a matter of translating that value to an additional step here within the mapping approach. So, all right, let's keep going. The next step that we took was to try and improve access to employment opportunity. Again, the EGF talks about improving access to jobs to create more equity in the future. And so the area that's currently hatched out is considered to have sufficient access, and that's really because of its proximity to the airport. So the majority of this area is seen to have low access to job opportunities. And from a place type perspective, we feel like mapping campus and innovation mixed use is a way to bring job opportunity to the area. Again, these are two work place types. So a campus is a hospital, office park, or university. And then innovation mixed use is that kind of mixture of office, research and development, flex innovation. So by recommending those place types, we allow those jobs to come here. And through this step, a large portion along Wilkinson Boulevard has been recommended for innovation mixed use. I want to mention here that we collaborated with the Silver Line Transit Station area planning effort that took place this summer. They were able to look at geographies within a closer view. And so they have some analysis that our process was not able to incorporate. And so we really partnered with them and trusted some of the recommendations that came out of that effort. So from an infrastructure perspective, this place makes sense. From an access perspective, this place makes sense. And you can see that it creates a huge opportunity in this area. That figure 780% increase compared to what was here previously.
The innovation mixed use place type doesn't have any residential, does it?
It does allow residential.
Oh, it does.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's kind of a nice mixture. You know, you're allowing people to live closer to job opportunities. These jobs are not as noxious or, you know, well, noxious is probably the best word compared to manufacturing. They're cleaner jobs. So it's more appropriate to have that mixture of residential and employment within this place. And it also creates a better transition to the existing single families around it. We wouldn't want to put manufacturing and logistics here because it wouldn't, you know, capitalize on our transit infrastructure. And then the proximity to existing single family would create an undesirable condition. So
sorry, just another accuracy. I know you have to get through a lot. So this already got zoned or approved for manufacturing logistics, but like 100 acres right here. And there's another 50 acres that I don't know if it's big enough to actually qualify for the green space. I don't know if a 50 acre.
I think 10 acres was our threshold.
Okay.
So if it's
Yeah,
larger than 10.
There's a 50 acre parcel in here that with this industrial rezoning was designated to be Parks and Recreation owned. So I think that would be really important to make sure that that is included in there. I'm fine to, well, I don't know about fine, but the innovation mixed use, it seems like there is a need for a gradational, and maybe you're going to come back to that. I see what you're doing, that you're sort of saying, is it reasonable to use the certain criteria, but it seems like there needs to be a gradation of like community or neighborhood centers out to this industrial innovation mixed use. Otherwise you sort of, it's a hodgepodge and there's no sense of community. So I think to put it in the context of this process, to be mindful of large swaths of that like would separate, you know, would preclude community connection to large areas.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So in other words, be mindful, like you have this massive swath of innovation mixed use, but so that could potentially, depending on what it becomes, sort of be this like isolated, you know, walled city of who knows what in there that's not connected to the communities around it. Whereas if you had a zone sort of in the middle of it that was a neighborhood center or a community center, it could speak to the surrounding community more, be more integrated.
I hear you. I mean, innovation, the vision for innovation mixed use is that it's more employment focused, but it should also be integrated and connected to surrounding places like our centers. It's not absolved from that expectation, but I can understand how, you know, this is a new place type assignment for our community. It's hard to understand how it's truly intended to function until we see more examples of it. An example I like to point to right now is the Optimus Hall, close to Uptown. It's the old hosiery mill that's been renovated for office and food hall, and there's supporting housing within close proximity. I think that place is integrated and relates to the community But it's definitely a smaller site than what's shown here on the map. And so I think your concerns, I can understand. Let me just confirm, you said that there is a large portion of manufacturing and logistics already zoned here?
Yep, huge,
Okay.
100 acres.
All right, so we'll need to look at that zoning.
And then,
Thank you.
and then as part of that, they zoned 50 acres they were meant to deed 50 acres to that to Parks and Recreation.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that'd be great if you could get that in there. I mean, don't get me wrong, I definitely don't want it to be industrial. We fought like crazy. I mean, innovation mixed use is better, but just so you're aware. And then I think the park part is really important to have on the map, on the final map.
On previous slides, I had talked about how this engagement phase is really an opportunity to add steps. It's also an opportunity to improve the accuracy of the current steps. So this feedback is very helpful and exactly what we need. No apologies at all, please. So our affirmation here is, do you think mapping campus and innovation mixed use place types in areas with low access to jobs is a good approach to increasing job access in the future? And Alberto, if it's giving you trouble, Aaron can drop that in the chat, or you guys can just say strongly agree, disagree, and I'll document it here.
Let me try it one more time, but it wasn't working.
Okay.
Yeah, it's failed to start poll. I think Aaron's been pasting it in the chat.
And then Jody, do you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I agree. You can put me as I agree.
Thank you.
This is Jim on my iPad now. I agree also.
I'm sorry, Jim, say that again.
Yeah, I agree also.
Thank you. Okay. I'm gonna do a time check here. Oh, we are running close to time. So I'm gonna do something. I'm gonna quickly cover this slide and then I want us to jump to the map, and feel free to open up the annotation because I think that exercise really lets us capture the range of concerns from, where do we need to improve our accuracy to where do we need to add steps. So the last step in our EGF work was to evaluate where there's low access to goods and services. Again, a large portion of this area has low access. And so we looked for opportunities to map commercial, neighborhood center, community activity center, and regional activity center, because these places allow a mixture of uses, and allowing that mixture of use would bring better access to goods and services. So what you can see reflected here, the River District entitlements, this somehow was missed on zoning. And so this was rectified here in this step. There's also some commercial recommended along 85 and some additional community activity center where there was commercial or in close proximity to the existing CAC. So this would be the final draft recommendations within this area. Again, it's just a first draft. And let me, if it's okay with everybody, I'm going to jump to the map where we can use our annotation tool. Just out of a quick reference, the future housing that these recommendations would attract is about 8% of the city's housing growth and 2% of the city's job growth. And then I'm going to skip these value questions and we're going to come here to our annotation. Missy, you know how to use the tool. Jody, if you hover over your Zoom control and there should be an annotate tool. If you don't see it, look under view options. And we're asking that you grab the stamp tool, and we're using the heart just because it's easiest to see. Let's go ahead and start putting hearts on the map for any area you want to talk about. Missy, you've been good about doing this as we go. But I just want to use the last few minutes that we have as a chance to identify other concerns or inaccuracies.
This is Jim. I can't use the tool, but it was addressed earlier that manufacturing and logistics zoned on Amos Smith and Riverwalk Way. That's in the middle of a residential neighborhood. Like it's at the point, yeah. Thanks. Where I see something like that and I start thinking about looking to move, right? So if that is an inaccuracy, if that can be fixed as soon as possible, or if someone can go out onto that map from the county and say that this is wrong with a stamp and say it's supposed to be residential, that would be very helpful.
Okay, and Missy, that's this heart that you just put down?
That's right.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jim. Missy, the heart here along Wilkinson at IMU, is that kind of a reflection of your CAC or NAC comment?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, that I think a community activity, or if you just look, I mean, if you look at the rest of Charlotte, like if you look at this map in the context of the rest of the county, we have such a high density of industrial in this map and such a low density of community activity centers and even neighborhood too. I mean, and we are out here because we do believe, I mean, we like that it's rural, but what is going to happen to all this neighborhood one is that people are going to come in and raise houses and put in these massive, cookie cutter developments, and then no one's going to have anywhere to go to shop and get their groceries. And so I'm putting that heart, as well as, I would say like that area along Mount Holly, Huntersville Road, somewhere along there. Even down obviously the river district is slated to become this main thing, but you can't get there from here. Like there's no good way. Old Dowd Road is a mess, and like there's no simple way to get down there. I mean, the rest of Charlotte can get there from coming west on West Boulevard and on Wilkinson, coming in from West Boulevard, but
do me a favor, don't clear your annotations here.
oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Usually I can clear just one. I'm sorry, I can use the eraser from now on. Let me put them back. I'm sorry.
It's totally fine. I'll help you put some hearts here.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put a heart on the comment about the river district, how it's not accessible from the top of the geography.
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask about this heart here on
Mount Holly, Huntersville Road?
Thank you.
Oh no,
is this Mount Holly?
Maybe. What is that, Jody?
Brookshire? No, that's not Brookshire.
It's not Mount Holly. Is that Freedom Drive?
Freedom.
Yeah.
You just feel like this manufacturing and innovation here is not appropriate?
Well, I mean, it could be, but I think butted up against neighborhood one, it needs more of a buffer. Like, why not have a buffer of neighborhood two around that, so that then if we do this innovation and mixed use, people that are going to be innovated for people and not innovated for making a lot of stuff that the local residents and communities can't use, there'll be much more. The higher the density of housing around those innovative sites, the higher the likelihood that what the developers will want to bring will be something exciting for the community, not just some other, big money maker for the man. Does that make sense?
Yes. One step I didn't get a chance to talk about was looking for opportunities to buffer between manufacturing and neighborhood one. That is a step that we weren't able to find as many opportunities as we had hoped because so much is already developed, but I appreciate that comment about buffering, and we'll look at this area. Can I ask about the heart here at the manufacturing and commercial?
I'm sorry again to be the one that keeps talking, but I put that there because again, it seems like a lost opportunity for like a regional activity center or something that connects commercial. I mean, maybe a commercial designation might do that, but with the Whitewater Center. And so I think I get the impression that commercial versus regional activity center would include less restaurants, and is that accurate?
Yeah, commercial in this location, I think commercial was kind of it reflected existing entitlements, and because of the accessibility, a regional activity center wouldn't make as much sense here.
Is there not a bridge? There's not a bridge right there. I think there is a bridge right there. The Mount Holly Huntersville Road goes across the bridge, and Mount Holly is really, I'm putting these hearts out here purposefully because you talk about access. I was curious in your access to jobs, if you considered Mount Holly and Belmont, or if you only
We had
within the.
we had an idea of what was going on across the border, but we were measuring our access from our land use
But
assignments.
in this particular, in West Outer, it doesn't make any sense not to consider Belmont. I mean, I can't tell you, I do things in all these places where these hearts are like weekly. And then I do maybe a few like that in Mount Holly. So you can't ignore that this part of the county is connected to really vibrant communities of Mount Holly and Belmont, and they are growing like crazy. And so again, the placement of some of these things on the border would pull in folks from Mount Holly, would pull in folks from Belmont, and Mecklenburg would be happy to have Gaston County people coming and spending their money, because right now Mecklenburg County is going and spending their money in Gaston County right now. And we'd rather have it going both ways, I would think.
Yeah, that's a fair comment. We could revise our access calculations based on adjacent land uses. That's a fair comment. Well, so we are at time, but I don't want to cut us off. Are there any other comments or questions we want to document?
Missy, I can't remember the lady's name that came and talked to us about food deserts, and she had us in a map. We are in a severe food desert over here, right where all these maps are. Like we need
Maps or hearts?
Well, the whole West Outer is a food desert. And then I think the hearts, some of these hearts like that we've been placing in like these areas have the potential to, to alleviate that. But I think that there needs to be, we are hearing from developers that there needs to be a higher density of housing in order to be able to justify having that type of development. So then if you're not including neighborhood 2 and higher density stuff in association with innovation and mixed use, then it's not going to be very innovative. It's going to be a big mess of stuff that we don't want to see, because those developers aren't going to be motivated to serve the adjacent community.
Right.
So I think it's really crucial. You can't just sort of say, build it and they will come. They're not going to, if there's not enough sort of higher density housing out here to support it.
So yeah, the blues and the purple, the light purple and the pinks, they would allow that higher density. But I hear you. You feel like the percentage is still insufficient compared to the rest of the city.
Right.
Let me, sorry, I'm going to be late to a meeting and I just want to let them know real quick.
Yeah, no, I've got class to teach too, but I think this is so important. I mean, we've been waiting for this and really want you guys to hear us, and we'll of course reach out to our neighborhood, our community about it. But so the innovation mixed use could be a grocery store even, but
it could include, it would be more employment than our other mixed use places. So neighborhood center and community activity center is going to have more of a balance between residential, office and commercial, whereas innovation would have a higher priority on the employment, but you would be expected to still have access to goods and housing in that place.
Okay, yeah, so I think maybe then what is needed is a higher density, maybe of neighborhood 2 around these areas, you know, especially like the innovation mixed use and stuff, so that you can start to ensure that you have the density that you need to attract developers that are going to serve the community.
Well, Missy, before everybody goes, and I don't want to discard anybody that's on this call, but I think it would be good if we could get everybody together and go over this map together and send that to Catherine. Like we can.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yeah, I think we'll present this map to a community meeting for sure. And at our
Before, what was it? The 15th? When was it? Yeah.
November 14th is when the online application is scheduled to close. And so if you guys could use that tool to collect comments from the community, that would be a really efficient way for us to hear from you all.
Because we could literally be on the tool during the community meeting and typing in comments like that. And people go to themselves. So.
And the tool, there's a little video on our website that tells you how to use the tool. Missy, you would be more than comfortable using it, I believe. But yeah, you basically drop an icon, type your comments, and then it's cataloged there.
I did, while we were specifically getting comments just from us, so this little area down here, like, for example, are you thinking about connectivity between this green space and these in the Whitewater Center? So like, I don't know where, I haven't looked at the street map thing, but like greenways and connecting greenways should be in the plan. And like, so this could be a really amazing opportunity to sort of go from a greenway, if we could somehow get right through there, like through there to get to this innovation mixed use campus, then you could have a greenway that then connected to ISWA and the Whitewater Center. Like you could really have an amazing opportunity for pedestrian access from all the way out at Little Rock. You know,
so that's a level of detail that is more granular than this map will get into. But by the nature of all the place types is that type of connection and the expectation for that type of pedestrian connection is embedded or innate in all of these places. Like we really, these places are encouraging providing those type of connections through all the guidance that's in the place type palette.
Gotcha.
So these colors allow that to happen in concept, and they allow it to happen and encourage it to happen better than our previous tool did. But that level of planning is more granular than can be reflected in this map.
And then I'm sorry, I keep going. I should just say, Jody, do you or Jim have other things to say? So
I was just going to ask Catherine, is she going to get back to us about the zoning on Morse Chapel? How are we going to leave that? Like, are we just going to?
So I would ask that you allow us to complete these conversations, and then we have to develop an internal process for responding to all these comments. And that's really what we're doing right now this week. So if you can give me a little bit of time, what we're going to be doing is cataloging these comments and posting them on our website. And we'll have some direction about how or when we can get to these comments. So I'm sorry, I don't have a direct answer today. We will get back to you. We're just still trying to figure out how to manage all of this.
And I guess, so right here, I would be opposed, like, why not take that innovation mixed use all the way down to Wilkinson? Because again, it's going to preclude innovative development if there's a big industrial site right up against the main frontage to Wilkinson. So right now that parcel is just a hodgepodge of things. It's not anything that would ever be preserved.
Right. That ML, that small ML.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I think we could spend another hour on this map, so we appreciate you taking the time.
I'm so grateful you guys joined us today. This was really helpful. And yes, please use that online comment app to continue to collect feedback from the community. And as we have more information online, we'll share additional emails. And so Jody, you can expect to have an idea of how we're managing all these comments and responding to them soon. We'll let you know about that through an email.
Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you guys. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So Aaron and Alberto, I need to jump to a meeting. Can you guys